Ambassador Kethavar stood in his office looking out at the stars. His long, thin fingers touched the glass window as he remembered better times. 43 years had passed since the Great War. 43 years since his people, the Zilani, had helped the humans fight against the terrible Corfac hegemony. Back then, humans were weak. Their ships were small and slow. Their weapons could barely scratch Corfac armor. The galaxy thought humans would be wiped out in a few months, but Kethavar had seen something special in them. They never gave up. Even when their colonies burned and their fleets were destroyed, humans kept fighting. The Zilani were peaceful people. They did not like war, but they could not watch genocide happen, so they shared their best technology with Earth. Shield generators that could protect entire cities, medical supplies that saved millions of lives, energy weapons that could actually hurt Corfac ships. The Zilani Council had argued for weeks about helping humans. Many said it was too dangerous. The Corfac might attack them too. Kethavar had been young then, full of hope and courage. He convinced his people to help. "If we do nothing," he had told the council, "we are already dead. The Corfac will come for us eventually. Better to fight beside brave allies than die alone." The war lasted 3 years. Humans learned fast. They took Zilani technology and made it better. They built bigger ships and stronger weapons. They fought battles that should have been impossible to win. In the end, the Corfac retreated to their home systems. Earth was safe. The galaxy was safe. After the war, humans grew powerful. Very powerful. They built massive fleets and conquered empty star systems. They made alliances with dozens of species. Earth became one of the strongest civilizations in the galaxy. The Zilani went back to their quiet lives. They were happy to study science and art, while humans protected the peace. But now the peace was ending. Kethavar's assistant, a young Zilani named Jendar, rushed into the office. Her blue skin was pale with fear. "Ambassador, urgent news from the outer sensors. The Corfac are coming." Kethavar felt ice in his stomach. "How many ships?" "Our scouts count over 500 war vessels. They are heading straight for our home system. They will arrive in 3 weeks, 500 ships." The Zilani had maybe 20 defensive platforms around their home planet. Their small fleet of research ships had no real weapons. This was not a battle. This was an execution. "There is more," Jendar said quietly. "They are broadcasting messages. They call us traitors. They say we helped the human plague spread across the galaxy. They promise to kill every Zilani slowly." Kethavar closed his eyes. This was his fault. His choice to help humans all those years ago had marked his people for death. The Corfac had never forgotten. They had spent 40 years rebuilding their fleet. Now they wanted revenge. "Call an emergency council meeting," Kethavar said. "We need to decide what to do." The council chamber was full of frightened voices. Old Zilani argued with young ones. Some wanted to surrender. Others wanted to run. A few spoke of fighting, but everyone knew it was hopeless. The Zilani were builders, not warriors. They made beautiful art and studied the mysteries of space. They did not know how to fight a real war. "We should contact Earth," Kethavar said when the room finally became quiet. "The humans remember what we did for them. They will help us." Council leader Morthak shook his head. "That was long ago, Kethavar. Humans have their own problems now. They rule half the galaxy. Why would they care about one small species?" "Because they are honorable," Kethavar replied. "I fought beside them. I saw their character. They do not forget their friends." "You saw them when they were desperate," another council member said. "Desperate people make promises they cannot keep. Earth is rich and powerful now. They have no reason to risk war with the Corfac over us." The debate went on for hours. In the end, the council agreed to send a message to Earth. But Kethavar could see doubt in their eyes. Even he was not completely sure. Humans had changed so much since the war. They had built an empire. Empires did not usually care about small allies. That night, Kethavar sat in his communications room. He typed the message very carefully. He explained about the Corfac fleet. He reminded Earth about the old alliance. He asked for help. Then he read it 3 times before sending it. The message traveled through space at faster than light speed. It would reach Earth in 6 hours. But would anyone there care enough to read it? Would they remember a small species that had helped them long ago? Kethavar walked through the city streets after sending the message. Zilani families were packing their belongings. The government had announced evacuation plans, but everyone knew there were not enough ships. Maybe 1 in 10 Zilani could escape before the Corfac arrived. The rest would face whatever punishment the Corfac had planned. Children played in the parks, not understanding the danger. Their parents watched the sky and worried. Some angry Zilani blamed Kethvar for their situation. If we had not helped the humans, the Corfac would leave us alone, they said. But others remembered the war differently. If we had not helped, the Corfac would rule the galaxy now. We would all be slaves. Back in his office, Kethvar stared at the communication screen. No reply from Earth yet. He tried to stay hopeful. Maybe they were preparing a response. Maybe they were getting their fleets ready. Maybe they would send ships to help. But as the hours passed, doubt grew in his heart. Earth had many problems of their own. Pirates attacked human colonies every day. Alien empires threatened human trade routes. Why would they risk their ships and soldiers for the Zilani? What if the Corfac had become too strong? What if even Earth could not defeat them? Kethvar looked at a picture on his desk. It showed him standing with Admiral Chen during the victory celebration after the war. They were both young then, both full of hope for the future. The Admiral had promised that Earth would never forget Zilani friendship. But Admiral Chen was probably dead now. Her children ran Earth and they had never met Kethvar. They had never seen Zilani soldiers die for human cities. Dawn came with no reply from Earth. Kethvar did not sleep. He kept checking the communication system, hoping for any message. But the screen stayed empty. Around the galaxy, other species were already making deals with the Corfac. They promised not to help the Zilani if the Corfac left them alone. Old alliances meant nothing when fear took over. As he watched the sunrise, Kethvar wondered if he had been foolish to trust human promises. The galaxy was a cold place. Maybe friendship only lasted as long as it was useful. Maybe the Zilani would die alone, forgotten by the very people they had saved. But even with doubt filling his heart, Kethvar did not regret his choice. The Zilani had done the right thing during the war. They had saved human children and protected human colonies. If that choice led to their destruction, at least they would die knowing they had been good people. He just wished someone would remember them after they were gone. 3 days passed without any word from Earth. Kethvar checked the communication system every hour, but the screen remained empty. No messages, no signals, nothing at all. The silence felt heavier than the approaching Corfac fleet. The evacuation of Zilani Prime had begun, but it was chaos. Ships designed for research and peaceful travel now carried desperate families trying to escape. Children cried as they were separated from friends. Old Zilani who had lived their entire lives on the home planet refused to leave. "If I must die," one elderly scientist told Kethvar, "I will die in my own garden." Jendar brought updates every few hours. The Corfac fleet was moving faster than expected. They would arrive in 2 weeks, maybe less. Their advanced scouts were already jamming long-range communications. Soon the Zilani would not be able to call for help even if someone wanted to give it. "Still no word from Earth?" Jendar asked. Kethvar shook his head. "Nothing. Maybe they never received our message. Maybe the Corfac are blocking more signals than we know." But both of them knew that was not true. Earth had the best communication technology in the galaxy. If they wanted to respond, nothing could stop them. The truth was harder to accept. Earth simply did not care enough to answer. The news feeds from around the galaxy made everything worse. They showed human colonies expanding into new star systems, massive human factories building warships by the dozens, Earth's great fleets patrolling trade routes and protecting human interests. Humanity had become everything they dreamed of during the war. They were strong, rich, and feared. One report showed a human admiral giving a speech about protecting Earth's allies. "We stand with our friends," the admiral declared. "No enemy will threaten those who stand with us." The words should have given Kethvar hope, but they only made the silence more painful. If Earth truly protected its allies, why had they not answered? The Zilani Council met every day now, trying to find solutions that did not exist. Some members suggested surrendering immediately. "Maybe the Corfac will be merciful if we give up without fighting," Council leader Morthak said. But everyone knew the Corfac did not believe in mercy. They had broadcast their intentions clearly. The Zilani would be made an example for the galaxy. Any species that helped humans would share the same fate. Other council members wanted to scatter the population across 100 different worlds. "We cannot save our civilization," they argued, "but we can save our species." It was better than nothing, But it meant the end of everything the Zilani had built. Their art, their science, their beautiful cities would all be destroyed. Kethavar suggested one more message to Earth, but the Council voted against it. "We have our answer," Morthak said sadly. "Silence is an answer too. We must face reality. Earth has moved beyond us." That night, Kethavar could not sleep. He walked through the city streets, watching his people prepare for the end. Families recorded messages for relatives on other worlds. Artists worked frantically to finish their final masterpieces. Scientists uploaded their research to hidden databases, hoping some of their knowledge would survive. The mood was not just sad, it was angry. Groups of young Zilani gathered in public squares shouting about the betrayal of Earth. "We saved them when they were nothing," one speaker declared. "Now they let us die because we are not useful anymore." Others defended the old alliance. "Humans fought bravely beside us. They do not owe us anything now." But even the defenders sounded uncertain. Kethavar found himself at the Memorial of Friendship, a statue built after the war to honor the Human-Zilani alliance. It showed a human soldier and a Zilani scientist working together to repair a shield generator. The words at the base read, "United in courage, bound by sacrifice, friends across the stars." Someone had painted new words over them. "Forgotten promises, abandoned allies." The old ambassador touched the statue and remembered Admiral Chen. She had been so grateful after the war ended. She promised that Earth would never forget Zilani's sacrifice. "Your people saved human children," she had said. "We will remember that forever." But forever was apparently only 43 years. Maybe the Council was right. Maybe Earth had outgrown the need for small allies. They had dozens of species begging to join their alliance now. Rich worlds with valuable resources, strong military partners who could contribute real power. What did Earth need with peaceful Zilani, who only offered science and art? On the fourth day, more bad news arrived. The Corfac had convinced 3 other species to join their fleet. They promised these new allies a share of Zilani technology after the conquest. The enemy force was now over 800 ships. Even if Earth wanted to help, could they defeat such a massive army? Maybe Earth's silence was actually wisdom. Maybe they knew this fight could not be won. Kethavar tried to imagine what Earth's leaders were thinking. Did they remember the Zilani at all? Did they discuss the request for help and decide it was too dangerous? Or had they simply deleted the message and moved on to more important business? The communication system in his office had become a torture device. Every time Kethavar looked at the empty screen, he felt more foolish for believing in human promises. But he could not stop checking. Some part of him still hoped for a miracle. Maybe Earth was just taking time to prepare. Maybe their silence meant they were planning something big. But hope was becoming harder to hold. News reports showed human fleets scattered across the galaxy, fighting small wars and protecting trade routes. None of them were moving towards Zilani space. Earth's military seemed busy with other priorities. The Zilani crisis was apparently not important enough to change their plans. Jendar brought the final crushing news on the 5th day. Long-range sensors had detected the Corfac fleet crossing into Zilani territory. They were only 10 days away now. Worse, they were broadcasting victory messages across the galaxy. "The traitors will pay for their crimes," the Corfac commander announced. "Let all species see what happens to those who aid the human plague." "Any response from Earth?" Jendar asked, though she already knew the answer. Kethavar just shook his head. There was nothing left to say. Earth had made their choice. The Zilani would face their end alone. That evening, Kethavar sat in his office writing his final report. He tried to be fair to humanity in his words. They had grown powerful and had many responsibilities now. They could not save every species in trouble. The Zilani had chosen to help Earth 43 years ago, and that choice led to this moment. It was not Earth's fault that the Corfac wanted revenge, but as he wrote, anger crept into his heart. Not anger at Earth's refusal to help, but anger at their refusal to even answer. A simple message saying, "We cannot help," would have been better than silence. At least then the Zilani would know they had been heard and remembered, even if they could not be saved. Outside his window, the last evacuation ships were lifting off. They carried perhaps 50,000 Zilani to safety among the stars. The billion who remained would face whatever the Corfac had planned. Kethavar had chosen to stay with his people. If this was the end of Zilani civilization, at least their leaders would share their fate. The communication screen remained empty as darkness fell. 7 days of silence from Earth. 7 days of watching hope die slowly. Soon the Corfac would arrive, and then even silence would be better than what came next. On the 8th day, alarms screamed across Zalani Prime. The sensors had detected massive energy signatures at the edge of the star system. Kethavar ran to the command center, his heart pounding. The Corfac had arrived early. All their preparations, all their desperate evacuation efforts had been for nothing. "How many ships?" he asked the sensor operator. The young Zalani looked confused. "Sir, the readings are strange. The energy patterns do not match Corfac vessels." Kethavar pushed past him to look at the display. What he saw made no sense. The signatures were huge, bigger than anything the Corfac had ever built. And they were organized in formations that looked almost human. "Analysis complete," the operator said, his voice shaking. "Sir, those are Earth ships. Hundreds of them." The command center fell silent. Everyone stared at the display showing contact after contact appearing from hyperspace. Not just a few ships, but an entire fleet. The biggest human fleet anyone had ever seen. Jendar grabbed Kethavar's arm. "How is this possible? They never answered our messages." Before Kethavar could respond, the communication system came to life. A woman's voice filled the command center, speaking with calm authority. "Zalani Prime, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran First Fleet aboard the Dreadnought Remembrance. Ambassador Kethavar, are you receiving this transmission?" Kethavar's legs nearly gave out. Chen. It had to be related to Admiral Chen from the war. He stumbled to the communication panel and activated the response system. "Admiral Chen, this is Ambassador Kethavar. We receive you clearly. Ambassador, we received your message 8 days ago. We came as soon as we could. As soon as they could." Kethavar stared at the display showing more ships arriving every minute. This was not a rescue force thrown together at the last moment. This was a massive military operation that must have taken weeks to organize. But that meant, "Admiral," Kethavar said carefully, "our message was sent only 8 days ago. How could you prepare such a large fleet so quickly?" There was a pause. Then Admiral Chen's voice returned, warmer now. "Ambassador, Earth has contingency plans for protecting all our priority Alpha allies. The Zalani have held that designation since the end of the Hegemony War. We have been ready to defend your system for 43 years. Priority Alpha allies, ready for 43 years. Kethavar felt tears running down his face. Earth had not forgotten. They had been planning for this day since the war ended. "Admiral, the Corfac fleet numbers over 800 ships. They will arrive in 2 days. We know, Ambassador. Our advanced scouts have been tracking them for weeks. That is why we brought appropriate force to deal with the threat." On the tactical display, the human fleet continued to grow. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and massive support vessels. But there was something else. Huge ships that looked like mobile construction platforms. "What are those large vessels?" Kethavar asked. "Those are engineering ships, Ambassador. We are not just here to fight the Corfac. We are here to make sure they can never threaten the Zalani again." Over the next few hours, Kethavar watched something incredible happen. The human fleet did not just take defensive positions around Zalani Prime. They began building. Massive construction ships deployed prefabricated stations and weapon platforms. Engineering teams worked with desperate speed to install new defensive systems around the planet. Admiral Chen requested permission to come aboard Zalani Prime, and Kethavar granted it immediately. When her shuttle landed at the capital, Kethavar was waiting personally. Admiral Chen was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and kind eyes that reminded him strongly of her grandmother. The Admiral Chen he had known during the war. "Ambassador Kethavar," she said, extending her hand in the human gesture of friendship. "It is an honor to finally meet you. My grandmother spoke of you often. She said you were the bravest diplomat she ever knew." They walked together through the city streets. Everywhere, human and Zalani engineers worked side by side, installing new shield generators and weapon systems. The technology was incredible, far beyond anything the Zalani had seen before. "This is all based on the shield technology your people shared with us during the war," Admiral Chen explained. "We have spent 4 decades improving it. These new generators can protect an entire planet from orbital bombardment." Kethavar stopped walking. "You developed this specifically for us?" "Not just for you, Ambassador. For all our priority Alpha allies. There are 12 species that helped Earth during the Hegemony War. Each one has a similar defensive package prepared. We call it the Gratitude Protocol. the Gratitude Protocol. Even the name showed how Earth remembered their debts. Kethvar had to sit down on a nearby bench. The weight of 43 years of worry was lifting from his shoulders. "Why did you not answer our messages?" he asked. Admiral Chen sat beside him. "Because we were already moving, Ambassador. The moment our sensors detected the Corfac fleet massing for attack, we began implementation of the Gratitude Protocol. Sending messages would have taken time away from preparation. We figured you would prefer ships to words." She was right, of course. But the silence had been agony. "We thought you had forgotten us. We thought Earth no longer cared about small allies." "Ambassador, do you have children?" "Yes, a daughter and 2 grandchildren." "If someone saved your children's lives, would you forget that person because you became successful later?" Kethvar understood. "No, never. The Zilani saved human children during the war. Millions of them. Earth does not forget that kind of debt." They walked to the central plaza where a massive new shield generator was being installed. Human engineers explained the system to fascinated Zilani scientists. The technology was beautiful, elegant, and incredibly powerful. "This shield can absorb the energy from 100 battleship main guns," the chief engineer told them. "And if they somehow break through, the power gets redistributed to weapon systems. The harder they hit you, the harder you can hit back." Admiral Chen smiled at Kethvar's amazed expression. "Your people gave us shield technology when we needed it most. Now we give you shield technology when you need it most." The circle completes itself, but there was more. The human fleet was not just defensive. Intelligence ships had been tracking the Corfac for months, learning their tactics and weaknesses. Battle plans had been developed specifically for this engagement. Strike forces were positioned to cut off Corfac retreat routes. "You are not just here to protect us," Kethvar realized. "You are here to end the Corfac threat permanently." "The Corfac have been a cancer in this galaxy for too long," Admiral Chen said. "They prey on peaceful species and threaten anyone who opposes them. This ends now." As night fell over Zilani Prime, the new defenses were nearly complete. The planet was surrounded by shield generators, weapon platforms, and sensor arrays. The human fleet took positions throughout the star system, ready for battle. It was the most powerful military force ever assembled to defend a single world. Kethvar stood with Admiral Chen on the observation deck of her flagship. The Remembrance was a massive ship built for one purpose: winning battles that others thought were impossible to win. "Admiral, I must ask, how many human ships and soldiers are you risking for us?" "Over 300 ships and 40,000 crew members." "And if Earth loses this battle, what happens to your career, your reputation?" Admiral Chen looked at him with surprise. "Ambassador, Earth does not send fleets this size unless we are certain of victory. We have been planning this battle for decades. We know exactly how it will end. How can you be so confident?" She pointed to the tactical display showing both fleets. "Because we learned from the Zilani during the war, Ambassador. We learned that the best way to win a fight is to be so well prepared that fighting becomes unnecessary. Tomorrow, the Corfac will see what Earth looks like when we have time to prepare." The next day passed in a blur of final preparations. Human and Zilani engineers worked without rest to complete the defensive grid around Zilani Prime. Every few hours, new capabilities came online: shield generators that could deflect planet-killing weapons, sensor arrays that could track a single fighter craft across an entire star system, weapon platforms that could destroy battleships with single shots. Kethvar spent the day learning about the Gratitude Protocol from Admiral Chen and her staff. What Earth had built was not just a defense system, it was a promise made real. Every piece of technology, every tactical plan, every ship position had been designed with one goal: making sure that no enemy could ever threaten Earth's priority alpha allies. "How long have you been planning this specific battle?" Kethvar asked the fleet's tactical officer. 16 years, sir. That is when our intelligence services confirmed that the Corfac were rebuilding their fleet for a revenge campaign. We have been modeling their attack patterns and developing counter-strategies ever since. 16 years. While the Zilani had lived in peace, believing they were forgotten, Earth had been preparing for this exact moment. Intelligence agents had watched the Corfac. Military planners had studied every possible attack scenario. Engineers had designed weapons specifically to counter Corfac technology. The scope of preparation was overwhelming. Earth had not just assigned ships to protect the Zilani. They had created an entire military doctrine around the idea of perfect defense for their allies. The gratitude protocol was more than technology. It was a philosophy that said some debts could never be repaid, only honored. There is something else you should know, Admiral Chen told Kethvar as they watched the final shield generators come online. Earth has been tracking every species that helped us during the war. We know when they are threatened. We know when they need assistance. The Zilani are not the first allies we have protected this way. What do you mean? 3 years ago, the Valdris faced economic collapse when pirates destroyed their trade routes. Earth sent a fleet to clear the pirates and provided economic aid to rebuild their infrastructure. 5 years ago, the Kamari homeworld was threatened by a plague. Earth sent medical ships and research teams. They developed a cure in 6 months. Kethavar was stunned. You have been protecting your old allies all this time? Earth keeps its promises, Ambassador. All of them. That evening, long-range sensors detected the approaching Corfac fleet. 837 ships, including some of the largest warships ever built. Their formation was aggressive and confident. They expected to find a helpless planet defended by research vessels and outdated defensive platforms. Instead, they found something that should have been impossible. The human fleet was arranged in perfect defensive formation around Zilani Prime. Every ship was positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire. The new defensive grid created multiple layers of protection around the planet. Even if the Corfac somehow broke through the human fleet, they would still face an impregnable fortress. Admiral Chen opened a communication channel to the entire Corfac fleet. Corfac vessels, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran First Fleet. You are approaching a world under Earth's protection. Turn around and leave the system immediately. The Corfac commander's response was filled with rage. Human dogs, this is not your fight. The Zilani betrayed their own species by helping your plague spread across the galaxy. They will pay the price for their crimes. The Zilani helped Earth when we needed it most, Admiral Chen replied calmly. That makes this our fight. That makes them our family. If you want to hurt our family, you have to go through us. You are outnumbered. We have over 800 ships. How many do you have? 300? Do you think your technology is so superior that you can defeat 3-to-1 odds? Admiral Chen's voice carried across space with absolute confidence. Corfac Commander, you are not fighting 300 human ships. You are fighting the promise Earth made 43 years ago to never forget those who helped us. You are fighting every human child who lived because of Zilani shields. You are fighting the memory of every human soldier who came home safely because of Zilani medicine. Do you really think numbers matter against that? The Corfac fleet continued its approach, but Kethavar could see uncertainty in their formation. They had expected to find a weak planet defended by obsolete technology. Instead, they faced the most advanced military force in the galaxy, positioned perfectly for defensive combat. All ships, Admiral Chen announced on the fleet channel. Gratitude protocol is now active. Defend our family. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations. The human fleet did not charge forward to meet the Corfac attack. Instead, they created a defensive grid that turned space itself into a weapon. Every cubic meter around Zilani Prime was covered by overlapping fields of fire from human ships and planetary defense platforms. The Corfac struck first, sending waves of fighters and bombers toward the planet. They expected to overwhelm the defenses with sheer numbers, but the human point defense systems were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Every fighter was tracked by multiple sensors. Every bomber was targeted by multiple weapons. The Corfac attack waves dissolved like rain hitting a window. Impossible, the Corfac commander broadcast. Our fighters are the fastest in the galaxy. Speed does not matter when your enemy knows exactly where you are going, Admiral Chen replied. We have been studying your tactics for 16 years. We know every formation you use, every strategy you employ. You have no surprises left. The main Corfac fleet moved closer, bringing their massive battleships into range. These ships had destroyed human colonies during the war. Their weapons could crack moons and boil away atmospheres. But when they fired on Zilani Prime, their shots struck the new shield grid and simply disappeared. The shields did not just absorb the energy. They converted it into power for the defensive weapons. Every shot the Corfac fired made the human defenses stronger. It was the ultimate expression of the technology the Zilani had first shared during the war, perfected over 4 decades of human engineering. Your shields cannot hold forever, the Corfac commander snarled. We will pound them until they break. Please continue, Admiral Chen said politely. Every shot you fire charges our weapons a little more. At this rate, our main guns will be at full power in about 20 minutes. The Corfac began to understand their situation. They were not attacking a defended planet. They were attacking a trap. Every shot they fired was being turned against them. Every move they made had been anticipated and countered. Some Corfac ships tried to retreat, but they found their escape routes blocked. Human interdiction fleets had been waiting in nearby star systems, just as Admiral Chen had planned. The Corfac had sailed into a carefully prepared killing ground with no way out. You planned this entire battle, the Corfac commander realized. We planned every possible battle, Admiral Chen corrected. We have contingency plans for attacks from any direction, at any time, with any number of ships. The Gratitude Protocol is not just about defense. It is about making sure threats to our allies are eliminated permanently. The human counterattack began with surgical precision. Instead of a massive bombardment, human ships targeted specific Corfac vessels with incredible accuracy. Command ships were disabled first, cutting communication between enemy units. Engine rooms were destroyed next, leaving Corfac ships drifting helplessly. Finally, weapon systems were eliminated, leaving the enemy defenseless. Within 3 hours, the Corfac fleet was completely neutralized. Not destroyed, but captured. Hundreds of enemy ships floated powerless in space while human boarding parties secured them. The entire operation had been executed with minimal casualties on both sides. Why did you not simply destroy us? The Corfac commander asked after his flagship was boarded. Admiral Chen answered from the bridge of the Remembrance. Because the Zilani taught us something during the war. They showed us that strength is not about destroying your enemies. It is about protecting what matters to you. We are strong enough to destroy you, but we are stronger because we choose not to. Kethvar watched the aftermath from Zilani Prime's surface. The planet was completely undamaged. The new defensive grid had worked perfectly. Not a single Corfac shot had reached the surface. Earth had not just protected the Zilani. They had made them invulnerable. 3 weeks after the battle, Kethvar stood on the observation deck of the Remembrance, watching the final human ships prepare to leave Zilani space. The Corfac fleet had been completely dismantled. Some ships were sent to Earth for study. Others were given to species that had been attacked by the Corfac over the years. The Corfac soldiers themselves were scattered across prison colonies, far from each other and far from any weapons. But Earth had not stopped with defeating the immediate threat. Admiral Chen had explained that the Gratitude Protocol included long-term protection measures. The defensive grid around Zilani Prime was now permanent. Human ships would patrol Zilani space for the next 50 years. Any species that threatened the Zilani would face the full military might of Earth. It is too much, Kethvar told Admiral Chen as they watched human engineers training Zilani technicians to maintain the new systems. We can never repay this debt, Admiral Chen smiled. Ambassador, you still do not understand. This is not about debt. This is about family. When the Zilani helped Earth during the war, you became part of us. Earth does not protect the Zilani because we owe you something. We protect you because you are us. The words hit Kethvar like a physical blow. Family, not allies. Not trading partners, not political connections. Family. Earth saw the Zilani as part of their own people, scattered across the galaxy but connected by bonds stronger than blood. But we are so different, Kethvar said. Humans are warriors. Zilani are builders. How can we be family? Because family is not about being the same, Ambassador. Family is about choosing to stand together no matter what happens. The Zilani made that choice 43 years ago. Earth made the same choice. Nothing will ever change that. Over the past weeks, Kethvar had learned more about Earth's Gratitude Protocol. It was not just a military program. It was a comprehensive system for protecting and supporting every species that had helped humanity during the war. Economic aid for struggling allies, military protection for threatened ones, scientific cooperation for those who needed technological advancement. 12 species held priority alpha status with Earth. Each one had defensive grids like the one around Zilani Prime. Each one had human fleets assigned to their protection. Each one was considered part of Earth's extended family, with all the benefits and protections that brought. How much does this cost, Earth? Kethvar asked. About 15% of our total military budget, Admiral Chen replied, and it is the best money we have ever spent. Do you know why? Kethvar shook his head. Because it makes us better than we were before. Every time Earth protects an ally, Every time we honor an old promise, we become more than just another powerful empire. We become something worth believing in. The transformation of Zilani society had been remarkable to watch. The fear and despair that had gripped the planet for weeks had been replaced by joy and wonder. Zilani children played in parks that were now protected by shields that could stop planet-killing weapons. Zilani artists created new works celebrating the friendship between species. Zilani scientists worked with human engineers to improve the defensive technologies even further. But there had been changes in the human fleet too. Kethvar had watched young human sailors learn about Zilani culture and history. They studied the art forms that had developed during the war, when Zilani creativity had helped sustain human morale during the darkest days. They learned about Zilani science and philosophy. They came to understand why their ancestors had thought these people were worth saving. The Zilani changed Earth as much as Earth changed them, Admiral Chen explained. Your people taught us that strength comes from helping others, not conquering them. That lesson shaped everything we became after the war. On the final day before the human fleet departed, the Zilani Council held a ceremony to thank Earth for their protection. Every human ship in the fleet was invited to send representatives to the surface. The Great Assembly Hall of Zilani Prime had never held so many people from so many worlds. Council leader Morthak gave a speech that brought tears to the eyes of both species. 43 years ago, we helped Earth because it was the right thing to do. We never expected anything in return. But Earth has shown us something wonderful. They have shown us that good actions create bonds that last forever. That friendship is stronger than fear. That some promises are so important they become part of who you are. When the ceremony ended, Admiral Chen approached Kethvar privately. Ambassador, Earth has a request for you. Anything, Kethvar replied immediately. We want you to come to Earth. The President wants to meet you personally. We want to show you what your people helped us build. We want you to see why we will never forget the Zilani. The journey to Earth took 2 weeks. Kethvar traveled aboard the Remembrance, learning more about human culture and military philosophy. What impressed him most was how often human officers spoke about their allies, not as tools to be used, but as family to be protected. The gratitude protocol was not just official policy. It was personal belief held by every person in Earth's military. Earth itself was almost beyond comprehension. Massive orbital stations surrounded the planet like artificial moons. Shipyards stretched across entire continents, building vessels that could carry Earth's protection to any corner of the galaxy. Cities rose into the sky, housing billions of humans and millions of allied species who had chosen to make Earth their home. But what struck Kethvar most was the Memorial of Sacrifice in Earth's capital city. It honored every species that had helped humanity during the war. The Zilani section was the largest, with detailed records of every person who had contributed to Earth's survival. Scientists who had shared their knowledge, engineers who had built shield generators, doctors who had treated human wounded, even artists who had created works to inspire hope during the darkest days. Earth remembers all of them, President Martinez told Kethvar as they stood before the memorial. We remember their names, their faces, their contributions. We tell their stories to our children. They are part of human history now, just as humans are part of Zilani history. The president was an elderly woman who had been a child during the war. Her life had been saved by Zilani medical technology. I exist because of your people, Ambassador. My children and grandchildren exist because of your people. How could Earth ever forget that? On his final day on Earth, Kethvar was given access to the Gratitude Archive. It contained detailed files on every species that had helped humanity during the war. Plans for protecting them, resources allocated for their defense, promises made and promises kept. The archive was tended by a staff of hundreds, all dedicated to making sure Earth never forgot its debts. This is not just about the past, the chief archivist explained. This is about the future. Every new alliance Earth makes, every friendship we build, every promise we give gets added to this archive. We are creating a galaxy where keeping your word matters more than military strength. When Kethvar returned to Zilani Prime, he found his world transformed. The human defensive grid was fully operational, managed by a joint human-Zilani crew. Trade agreements with Earth had brought prosperity to the Zilani economy. Scientific exchanges had advanced Zilani research by decades. Most importantly, the fear that had haunted the Zilani for 43 years was gone. They were safe. They were protected. They were family. Kethvar wrote his final report as ambassador, knowing it would be read throughout the galaxy. His words were simple but powerful. When I thought no one would arrive, Earth showed that it does not forget those who helped it. The gratitude protocol is more than military protection. It is proof that some bonds between people cannot be broken by time, distance, or changing circumstances. Earth has shown the galaxy what it means to keep a promise. They have shown us what it means to be family. The report was transmitted to hundreds of worlds and translated into dozens of languages. It became required reading in diplomatic schools across the galaxy. It was studied by military leaders, political scientists, and historians. But most importantly, it was read by ordinary people who learned that sometimes, in a galaxy full of fear and conflict, someone actually keeps their word. The Zilani were safe. Earth had kept its promise. And across the galaxy, other species began to understand that there was a new way to measure strength, not by how many worlds you could conquer, but by how many friends you could protect, not by how much fear you could inspire, but by how much trust you could earn. The age of the gratitude protocol had begun.